My name is Pretentious Hipster, and I am a video game reviewer on YouTube who gets tons of views. Now, I'm using my knowledge to find obscure Wii games, helping them gain attention with this competitive console. These are hidden gems. The Wii Shovelware Edition.
Ah, yes. Licensed games of kids' TV shows. It's funny, because they always get a rap for being bad games, but looking at the critic scores, they tend to get middling, if not decent to good reviews. The comments for the games years later has quite a few fans into the nostalgia of them. For example, there's this game. There are quite a few reviews on YouTube calling this good for a kids game, but honestly they were kind of sad videos. There were 3 minutes each, which partially makes sense because it was earlier YouTube, but they didn't talk about anything in depth, not even the company responsible for it and why the gameplay mechanics are like that. They also never really showed any footage past the first in-game world. One of them legit looked like they only played the game for 30 minutes. I was definitely interested in trying this one out. I mean, it costs about as much as a chocolate bar and 500 milliliters of soda. Then there's the fact that it has quite a good critic score, and well, me not being interested in the show, I feel like I can go into this with more of a good faith. Because with licensed games like this, people are just gonna brush it off being like, oh, it's just a kid's game, or people who are gonna look at it through a nostalgic lens. I feel like with my analysis, at least it's gonna be a little bit different. Is this a Wii hidden gem, or is this just the standard Wii shovelware? Stay tuned to find out.
Oh no! What are you doing without your gnome clothes? They will come and get you!
I'm not gonna lie, I kinda wanted to get familiar with the show itself, so that, I'll be able to understand what's going on in this game, and that it's in more good faith. And well, I decided to just see the movie tie-in. Honestly, I had an alright time with it. The plot is of course super simple, relying on its use of tropes to the point that it was a meme, as the best way to summarize it is literally 1984. However, the character designs are great, and I was surprised at just how quirky it was. Although apparently that is the standard of kids shows now. I think it's obvious what the best part of the show is though. Perry the platypus. The weird part is looking at who developed it. High Impact Games. It was by the former members of Insomniac Games. The main things they are known for are the Spyro PS1 series, the Ratchet and Clank series, the Resistance series, and Marvel's Spider-Man. This company is known for mostly making PSP entries, which include Ratchet and Clank Size Matters, Secret Agent Clank, and Jak and Daxter The Lost Frontier. These games are received well, but I know they are incredibly hated. I think I see one of the big reasons why, because they did the very odd thing of them being handheld games, but were ported to home consoles with little to no changes. I imagine the graphics would have looked awful in a huge TV. Now, it's very important to mention the company of this, because it's going to explain so many gameplay mechanics of this, and it's kind of a surprise of what happens with this. I can see this game being the most confusing mess possible if you haven't seen the movie. Perry is basically a secret agent under disguise by using a host family, alongside plenty of other pets. During a mishap, they crash into Doofenshmirtz's lab and repair his other Dimensionator. They travel inside the 1984-esque dimension, where they have doubles, with different roles of course. All the chaos happens that you would expect, but the film has these musical montages, and during one of them they travel through a vast array of dimensions. This game explores that montage part. Right from the beginning I appreciated the art direction of this. I mean, it's standard definition and in 3D, which usually doesn't look the best, but the overall design of the environments, character designs from the show, and the enemy designs more than make up for it. You can immediately tell that it goes for a more linear design. You've got these coins with the counter right at the top, for example, And when you have obstacles, it usually means finding parts for a blueprint, which lets you construct something that you can go past said obstacle. For example, in the first level you have to make a catapult. This takes us to one of the strengths of it, the variety of what the levels have. In this example, you get launched and have to collect the spare parts while flying by. There are a few more which include going down a slide, and then the one I want to leave a surprise when we get there. The Ratchet and Clank comparisons are already starting. You can see how many types of guns you're able to use. You've also got the counter of various screws, nuts and bolts that add up, and you've got the rechargeable ammo. Your weapons have levels, which gives it the ability to be upgraded even more. You do that by taking it to a workbench, and then you trade in the spare screw parts into modifier chips, and use those to input stuff like recharge rate, damage, overall ammunition amount, etc. You then have a few more that you get as you unlock more levels, which include what type of ammo, and what sounds they make. Have parry using a parry sound effect for the baseball launcher? Hell yeah. Have the orange juice spray milk instead? Of course, but don't worry, the game doesn't make it dirty. Each weapon has its own unique ability. For example, the baseball launcher can launch one inside a mini sort of tunnel, and you have to navigate the baseball around. Of course, with a game like this, you're gonna have tons of unlockables. This leads to a very annoying part of the game, but to be fair, it was mostly my fault. Those 5 big coins that you can find in each level, you can use them as tokens for minigames. With those, you get tickets that you can use to trade in unlockables. The crane game, need I say more? It's about as bad as a crane game in real life. You then get something called parry ball, which is basically skee ball. Different colors are worth different points, and the harder you throw it, the further you go. The problem is that it's not even the Wii Motion Plus. Believe me, this is going to be the most inconsistent thing ever, and you will never master it. Fortunately, you don't need that many tokens, unless you're looking to unlock everything, which I initially tried to do. Doing this in between every level made this a living hell. My advice, just don't do that. Who cares about the figurines and stuff like that? Sound effects? Maybe. But save it up for when you can purchase characters and maybe 1 or 2 costumes of your favorite characters. Beyond that, just ignore it. To add even more complexity to it, there are some puzzles. For example, you can jump on these switches with the other character and have one lift the other one up higher. You can use the anti-gravity gun to move markers around so that a laser goes from one end to the other, or just moving gears. The carbonator can be used to set levels of platforms by filling up those containers. This is more about the first dimension that this game explores, but I will go through the pros and cons as I go through this game. The first dimension has an honestly very fun boss battle, plus you unlock Perry and a turtle character, who are agents as described in the film. Unfortunately, that was not really the conclusion of this dimension, and you will see why that's a flaw. The next level is a sort of shmup style section. It does remind me of one of my earlier videos of the therapeutic lessons I've learned from that genre, such as having to use your powered up weapons often, in this case being the firecrackers, or using the duo power up whenever you can. The coins are determined by how many screws you get, which you get by killing enemies. It's honestly a decent segment. One of the major flaws shows up at the end of this level. You have a decent puzzle using the gelatin, and then fighting a bunch of enemies in waves on a platform. Then, the level ends.
Alright, let's pop this cork and clear out the gelatin.
In the southern hemisphere, the gelatin would rotate counterclockwise down its ring.
What direction does it spin here?
Also counterclockwise.
Perfect timing, too! The power cells you have collected are charged. You can use the other dimensionator.
Woohoo! Here we go!
And you go to the next dimension. What about, like, a boss battle? You can't make the conclusion to a dimension, in-game world, or anything like that so anticlimactic. Believe me, it actually gets worse as it goes on. The second dimension shows how creative these dimensions can be, this time being a balloon one. It's kind of obvious though what the gimmick of this one's gonna be.
Welcome to the land of balloons. You'll find the other inhabitants aren't nearly as friendly.
But man, do some points get surreal. Gotta love the modern day kid stuff. Right when you start it shows another feature of the weapons. You can find mods throughout the world that basically do stuff like more damage. They give in a very obvious spot the first time, but most of the time they are more hidden, or at least you have to go out of your way. I find it a good way to add some complexity to the levels, and a good way for you to explore them without making it seem too annoying or having too much backtracking. This dimension does the usual stuff, well in fact from here on out they all do, which is trying to keep things fresh by introducing new weapons like the gloves that can grab onto walls, or a weapon that allows you to hack electronics by fighting enemies that can kind of be considered viruses or malware or whatever those are. On top of that, there are the gameplay gimmicks, like its platforming in the balloon dimension. But remember how I said that some of it can be anticlimactic before reaching the next dimension? Look at the balloon one. You go on the moving platform for a while, fighting porcupines, and well, that's it. No, there was not even one boss battle in this entire dimension. In terms of graphics, the old time dimension might be my favorite, with the obvious reference here, but this is what makes it sad. First you gotta sort stuff out by fighting some enemies, do some fun platforming, and then a frankly annoying fetch quest in a maze that, to be fair, isn't first person so it's not the worst. And then, that's it. That's the entire dimension. Little to no combat, and once again no boss battles. Like, I kind of get it, because if you end every dimension with a boss battle, it kind of comes across as repetitive. But on the other hand, you're gonna have a larger enemy variety and a much more satisfying conclusion. The only other boss battles are the ones in a known dimension, I guess some of the shmup ones in the 1984 style dimension, and one where you're on a giant robot of the Queen, which was just an amazing one. Not even like for a kid's game, but like for any game. And of course the final boss that just goes on for way too long. The last two dimensions are related to each other, and as they deal with the rest of the film, of course they take up a huge segment of the game time. However, thanks to the changes in the gameplay to keep things fresh, I didn't find that it overstayed its welcome. Plus, doesn't it have the best scene ever with the two players here disguising themselves as the same person? The other huge flaw lies in its single player. There is always another player with you. That's fine, but the AI of it is really bad. They will fall quite often during the platforming section, especially at the minecart one. Fortunately, there are no penalties for doing that, but it makes the puzzles a lot more difficult. Especially this one where you gotta line up stuff like the carbonator filling up the containers. Basically, puzzles that require more coordination. The worst is with the healing though. I was pretty much always in full health, but my partner rarely was. You think I'll be able to pick up the health for both of us? Nope. And if my partner loses all of their health, they go to a stun lock for a few seconds. So, I have to switch characters, run to the med packs to heal, but when I do that, it heals both of us. It's just poorly programmed for something like that to happen. But, if you are playing with another player, these flaws will be avoided. It's funny because if you look at what is honestly maybe the worst Wikipedia article, it mentions that they didn't want to release a 360 version of this because they couldn't use the Kinect. It's kind of weird because they say they want to utilize the motion controls, but pretty much the only instances where you use it is when you play skee-ball or when you shake the Wii remote really fast. Like, they could have easily done that with buttons. Talk about milking the motion controls craze. Like, I kind of had an alright time with this. It's basically like the movie, it's just inoffensive. I kind of wrote this script a few weeks before and I forgot most of the gameplay, so I actually had to rewatch some of the footage. But from what I can tell, this is pretty much just a bootleg version of Ratchet and Clank. I mean, sure, if your kids love the show, they will probably love this game, but you're better off showing them even the PS2 era Ratchet and Clank games. I'm sure that they would have an absolute blast going through those. Thanks for watching.